He called it helping. I called it surviving. When you can't move, you learn the sound of danger, especially when it shares your last name. I never thought I'd be sitting here, telling this story. For the longest time, I believed it would die with me. But silence is a poison that spreads through generations. My name is Charlotte Evelyn Whitmore, and I'm 74 years old. I live in a small cottage in Asheville, North Carolina, where I tend to my herb garden and counsel women who've walked through their own valleys of shadows. But 30 years ago, I was a different woman entirely, trapped, voiceless, broken. It was February 3, 1994. I remember the date because it was the day my world changed forever. Not the day it began, oh no, that had been happening for years. February 3rd was the day I finally understood that sometimes the monster in your life doesn't hide under your bed or lurk in dark alleys. Sometimes, the monster calls you Mom. I'd been paralyzed from the waist down for 3 years by then. A drunk driver had T-boned my car on Interstate 40. In March of 1991, the doctor said the damage to my spinal cord was permanent. T12 complete injury. They called it. I thought I understood what complete meant back then. I was wrong. My stepson, Jackson, I'd raised him since he was 6 years old, when I married his father, had moved back home to help me after the accident. 28 years old, couldn't hold a job, angry at the world. His father, my husband Benjamin, had died of a heart attack just 6 months before my accident, and I thought, God help me. I thought having Jackson there would be a blessing. For 8 months, he was everything I needed. Cooking, cleaning, helping me navigate life in a wheelchair. The neighbors would comment on what a devoted son he was. You're so lucky to have Jackson, they'd say. Not every mother has a child who'd sacrifice so much. The first time it happened, I convinced myself I'd imagined it. Late at night, when I was helpless in my bed, unable to move my legs, unable to run. He told me it was just helping me get comfortable. Said his father would have wanted him to take care of all my needs. But it wasn't imagination. It was deliberate, calculated, and it was only the beginning. For 4 years, I lived in a prison made of my own flesh. Every day I'd wake up hoping it had all been a nightmare, that the previous night's horror would somehow disappear in the morning light. But darkness has a way of following you, even into the brightest days. Jackson was smart about it. He knew exactly how to manipulate the situation. He'd be charming and helpful during the day when the physical therapist came. When the neighbors visited, he'd wheel me out to the garden, read to me, make me laugh. And then, when the sun went down, he'd tell me things, terrible things, that no one would believe me if I told them. That I was crazy, that the accident had damaged more than just my spine. He'd say, I should be grateful that someone was willing to take care of someone like me. Someone broken. Someone worthless. I started to believe him. When you hear something every day for years, when you're isolated and dependent, when your own body has betrayed you, you start to think, maybe they're right. Maybe this is what you deserve. But the human spirit, it's a stubborn thing. Even when it's beaten down, crushed, abandoned, there's always a tiny flame that refuses to go out. Mine was barely a flicker by 1994, but it was still there. That February day I mentioned, Jackson had been drinking. More than usual. He'd been turned down for another job that week, and he was taking his frustrations out on me in ways that, in ways that no human being should ever endure. But this time, he got careless. Or maybe God finally decided to intervene. Our neighbor, Mrs. Harper Kingsley, bless her soul, she came by to check on me. She had a key, because she'd been helping me before Jackson moved in full-time. She walked in at exactly the wrong time. Or maybe it was exactly the right time. Jackson was so focused on what he was doing to me, that he didn't hear her come in. She saw everything. The sound Harper made, I'll never forget it. This gasp of pure horror. Jackson jumped up, started making excuses, saying I was having an episode, that he was just helping me with my medication. But Harper wasn't stupid. She'd been a nurse for 30 years. She called 911, right there in my bedroom, staring Jackson down like an avenging angel. told them to send police and an ambulance. Jackson tried to intimidate her, but Harper, she was built from steel wrapped in kindness. The paramedics, they knew immediately. The physical evidence was undeniable. The hospital examination confirmed what Harper had witnessed. Jackson was arrested that night, February 3, 1994. I remember watching him being led away in handcuffs from my hospital bed, and for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. The trial was a nightmare. This was 1995, and the legal system wasn't as educated about elder abuse or disability rights as it is today. Jackson's defense attorney painted me as a bitter, disabled woman making false accusations against her devoted stepson. They said the trauma from my accident had affected my mind. But Harper testified. The medical evidence spoke for itself. And slowly, painfully, I found my voice again. The prosecutor was a young woman named Sarah Chen. She'd just helped pass what they called the Charlotte Act for enhanced penalties in elder abuse cases. She fought for me like her own life depended on it. Jackson was sentenced to 25 years for aggravated sexual assault, elder abuse, and criminal confinement. I thought it was over. I thought justice had been served. He served exactly 12 years and 4 months. Got out in 2007 for exceptional rehabilitation progress and model prisoner behavior. 12 years for 4 years of hell. But you know what? By the time he got out, I wasn't the same broken woman he'd left behind. Harper had connected me with an incredible therapist, Dr. Amelia Rodriguez, who specialized in trauma recovery for disabled women. There was a support group through our Voice, the Asheville Women's Crisis Center. Physical therapy that actually helped me build upper body strength, master my wheelchair, become truly independent. More importantly, I learned that what happened to me wasn't my fault, that I wasn't worthless, that I wasn't broken beyond repair. I was a survivor. In 1998, I moved here to this cottage in the mountains. Started over completely. Used the settlement from the civil suit against Jackson and the drunk driver to buy this place. Started my herb garden with plants native to the Appalachian region. I began working with our Voice, counseling other women who'd experienced similar traumas. I met the most incredible women, survivors who'd endured things that would break most people, but who'd found ways to rebuild their lives with grace and strength. We formed a community, a chosen family of sorts. I finally understood what healing looked like. Years passed. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Jackson had gotten married in prison through a pen pal program, had convinced some poor woman he was a changed man. When he got out, they moved to Florida, had children. Part of me was relieved. It meant he was far away from me and hopefully not hurting anyone else. Then, in 2019, 25 years after that horrible February night, there was a phone call, not to me directly, to the Asheville Women's Crisis Center, where I'd been volunteering for over 20 years. A social worker from a Tampa nursing facility was looking for family members of Jackson Whitmore. He'd been admitted with advanced ALS Lou Gehrig's disease. His wife had divorced him when the diagnosis came, taken the children, and disappeared. He was completely paralyzed, on a ventilator, and had apparently been asking for me. The social worker said one of the nurses had mentioned knowing about a Charlotte Whitmore in North Carolina, who worked with herbal medicine and trauma counseling. Somehow, word had gotten back to Jackson that I was alive, that I'd built a life for myself. The social worker asked if I'd be willing to visit him. Maybe provide some kind of ... closure. She said he'd been trying to write letters but couldn't hold a pen anymore. That he'd been asking about making amends. And you know what I told her? I said very clearly, Jackson Whitmore made his choices 30 years ago. He chose to destroy the woman who'd raised him, who'd loved him as her own son. The consequences of those choices are his to bear alone. I felt no anger saying those words, no satisfaction. No pity. He was just a dying man who'd run out of people willing to clean up his messes. I told the social worker that if Jackson wanted to make amends, he could donate whatever money he had left to organizations that help abuse survivors. That would be the only contribution to healing I'd accept from him. 6 months later, I got another call. Jackson had died, alone. The social worker said he'd left instructions for his small estate to be donated to our VOICE in Asheville. It wasn't much, maybe $3,000, but it was something. I didn't feel vindicated by his death. I didn't feel guilty about refusing to see him. I felt complete, like a circle had finally closed. You see, I'd learned something important in those 25 years of healing. Forgiveness isn't about absolving someone else's sins. It's about refusing to let their actions continue to poison your life. I'd forgiven Jackson years earlier, not for his sake, but for mine. But forgiveness doesn't mean you have to let someone hurt you again, even if they're dying. Today, I run a support network for survivors that serves women throughout Western North Carolina. We have over 300 women in our community now, ranging in age from 16 to 91. We garden together using traditional Appalachian healing herbs, cook together, laugh together, cry together. We've built something beautiful from our shared pain. This cottage isn't just my home, it's a sanctuary. Women come here when they need to remember that they're not alone, that survival is possible, that healing is real. Every herb in my garden has been chosen for its traditional healing properties: golden seal, echinacea, ginseng, evening primrose. Every room holds the echoes of women finding their strength again. I want to be very clear about something. What happened to me was not some cosmic lesson or divine plan. It was simply evil, pure and simple. There's no silver lining to sexual assault, no hidden blessing in having your trust violated by someone you loved. But there is life after trauma. There is healing after horror. There is love after betrayal. Not because of what happened to us, but despite it. We don't overcome trauma by pretending it made us stronger. We overcome it by refusing to let it make us smaller. The $3,000 Jackson left became the seed money for our safe haven program, emergency housing for women fleeing domestic violence in rural mountain communities where resources are scarce. In a strange way, his final act was the first useful thing he'd done in his entire adult life. This is my chosen family, the women who've helped me build this life, and the women I've had the privilege to help in return. We're teachers and students, grandmothers and young mothers, executives and artists, mountain women and city transplants. What we share isn't our trauma, it's our refusal to be defined by it. People sometimes ask me if I ever think about what my life would have been like if that drunk driver had never hit me, if Jackson had never hurt me. The truth is, I can't imagine being anyone other than who I am today. Not because I'm grateful for the trauma, but because I'm proud of who I've become in spite of it. If there's one thing I want people to understand from my story, it's this. Silence protects predators, not victims. Speaking up isn't always safe, and it isn't always believed, but it's always powerful. Even when justice fails us, and it often does, truth has its own strength. I'm 74 years old. I've survived a car accident that left me paralyzed, 4 years of sexual assault, systematic failure of people I trusted, and the devastation of having my safety violated by someone I'd raised as my own child. But I've also experienced the incredible power of human resilience, the healing presence of true community, and the profound satisfaction of helping others find their way through their own darkness. The last thing I'll say is this: if you're watching this and you're living in your own hell, if someone is hurting you and you think no one will believe you, if you've been convinced that you deserve the pain, please know that none of it is true. You deserve to be treated with dignity. You deserve to feel safe. You deserve to be believed. And if you're struggling to believe that healing is possible, that life can be beautiful again, that you can build something meaningful from the ashes of trauma, I'm here to tell you that it is. Not easy, not quick, not without setbacks and tears and rage and grief, but possible. This garden started as a single sprig of mountain laurel that Harper gave me when I moved here. Today, it feeds and heals dozens of women every year. Growth is possible, even after you think everything has been destroyed. My name is Charlotte Evelyn Whitmore. I am a survivor, a healer, a gardener, and a woman who refused to let evil have the last word in her story. And if you're still here, still fighting, still hoping you're a survivor too,